Hello, this is Salmask and I'm an indie game developer, and what you're seeing right now is the game I'm currently making, and it's called Dark Lord. So I guess I'll say the default disclaimer and say that everything you see in that snapshot is subject to change because it's quite an early stage, but I'll definitely add a lot of stuff and it's gonna be awesome. So to give you a brief description, well, the game is about world conquest, and you play as a Sauron type villain, so a Dark Lord. So currently the graphics are in ASCII characters, but I might end up adding a tile set before release, but no promises. So the reason I'm making this 6 tips for indie game developers video is that, well, I was looking on Kickstarter, and on Kickstarter you have this paragraph where you have to prove that you can deliver, basically. So it's on your credentials and what you have, that you can finish your project in time. Well, I don't have much proven credentials. I don't have a big resume of indie games that have used success, but as I was looking at other indie game developers and also a 10 tips for beginner game devs article on a website, and looking at other indie games in general, I saw that I was disagreeing on a lot of points and things they were saying and doing. So yeah, basically I think I know what to do and where to go to make a good indie game. So feel free to disagree with me, and I can admit that I might be horribly wrong, but I think I got something. So for example, I was seeing this guy on Twitch that was developing live for the viewers, and he was very conservative and a perfectionist. He said that he would rather code his own stuff than use the STL on C++, and while he was coding in C++, he barely used C++, and most of it was in C, because again he would rather code his own stuff by himself than take the shortcuts that C++ give you in objects and classes, and the shortcuts of the STL. Basically, most of the stuff, the basic stuff that you need for programming, is already in the STL, and in my opinion it's pretty good. It's of pretty high quality, and also it's pretty consistent, and I've seen some videos of the guys working on the STL, and some of those guys are wizards. They are very good at programming, and they end up with very ingenious solutions. And although the single files for the STL are very big, they end up making very ingenious solutions for very big files. And for a big company, that's wizards like that, very good programmers like that you need. And I think that the STL is a very good tool if you want to use it, and if you're in C++ and not using it, it's kind of stubborn. Yeah, so also he was very perfectionist. He would rather focus on a game engine rather than go directly in game development. And seeing that he wanted to make everything by himself, the engine will likely be quite big or incomplete when he's going to game development, and he'll have to add stuff like I don't know, lists or arrays, because he seemed like he wanted to make arrays, make coding for his own homemade arrays and stuff like that. And since no one is perfect, I predict he'll end up putting way too much time in making trivial things that already have consistent shortcuts, than actually developing his games and increasing the depth of the game and making good gameplay design. So this video is for all grades of indie game developers, I think. So if you're a beginner, it's a good starting point. I think it can probably help you refocus, if you're a medium grade, or that you're maybe even expert, but maybe it can help you refocus if you're making a mistake that I will say in the tips. Or maybe I don't know what I'm talking about, and obviously coding your own arrays will mean you will make the next Hotline Miami, but yeah, shots fired. Finally, the tips are oriented if you actually want to have a little bit of success with your games. So if you want to have fun, making games for yourself, or simply want to mess around, well, you should probably do the opposite of what I'm saying. But really, it's supposed to make good games. So the first step, do the game you want to play. Well, this comes from when I was reading an Anne Rice interview, and she said that nobody was making the book she really wanted to read, about vampires and sexual tension and stuff. So yeah, I think this is the best tip you can have if you're starting a new game. Well, there are a lot of humans on this planet, and if you like something, if you want to read a book or make a game about something that nobody else has done before, well, there's probably people with your tastes that will also want to play your game. Also, if you want to make a game that you would want to play, well, it's probably because there's something that no game before has done, or done like you wanted it to be done. If you want to make a game in order to play it afterwards and have a blast, well, it's probably because it has something unique, and your game needs something unique in order to be successful and go off. Tip number 2. Prioritize gameplay over graphics. So, unless the graphics are what's unique about the game you are making, you shouldn't be focusing on them. The number one reason for this is that graphics, and the more complicated they are, take a lot of time to make, and that means that it takes a team of artists and money to pay them. Since we are indie game developers, we often don't have a big budget, and a surefire way to make your budget go out of control is to try to have graphics that are too high quality for that budget. So for example, let's take the games that we are seeing in this image, Pokemon Red and Blue. This is a game that a lot of people say sold the Game Boy. So obviously it got huge success. It spanned an entire franchise, the Anaheim show, movies, other games, and a lot of fanboys, it's my generation. But the impressive part about that game is that there was very few people actually developing the game, and it was still very deep and enjoyable, and you could literally lose entire nights playing it, even if it didn't have color and some Pokemons really looked bad. And this is an example of a game that didn't focus on graphics and instead focused on deep gameplay and originality, and got a huge success. And in the end, it made the Game Boy a success, and it also spanned the whole Pokemon thing. So another example, but a little more subtle, is World of Warcraft. And yes, it's a AAA game, but from day one, Blizzard focused themselves on making beautiful graphics in a kind of cartoon style. The polygon count wasn't really high, and a lot of people said the graphic quality was obsolete the day it came out. However, Blizzard focused on making a huge game world with a ton of quests, long dungeons and raids, and beautiful art design. And even if the technical aspect of the graphics was bad, the game still looked good because of the art design. And in the end, well, it made the most popular MMO ever made, and the most lucrative game ever made also, because of the people were addicted to the game because of the gameplay, and maybe also because of it was hard and grindy at that time, so people were addicted to the gameplay, and they kept paid full price for the game, and also $15 per month, depending on your subscription. But it was $15 per month, and they paid that, and some people paid that for years. So in the end, they made the most money ever with that game. So yeah. Tip number 3. Focus on a great story or unique gameplay. Your game needs to have something great and unique. It doesn't have to be gameplay though, it can also be an awesome story. For example, the game you're seeing right now, Final Fantasy X. Okay, it does have awesome graphics for the time, but the selling point about the game is the story and the experience it gives you. So the gameplay is not that unique, and instead it's a proven JRPG formula that involves little risk. It did have Blitzball though, which was my favorite minigame ever. Another example is Dwarf Fortress. So I cheated by taking the example of Final Fantasy X because it had awesome graphics. So let's go to the other spectrum and give you an example that have no graphic at all, or almost none. Dwarf Fortress relies on the uniqueness of its gameplay for success, and while it has very steep learning curve, in part because of the ASCII graphics and tons of bugs, it still delivers a unique experience that fans of high fantasy like me really want to play. And I have to admit, I had a lot more fun with Dwarf Fortress than a lot of AAA games that come out. Also, it was made by only one guy, and I have to admit, what made me decide to work on Dark Lord is this game. It's kind of a sandbox game with no goals. And what I really wanted to play was a game where you could invade other cities, and I always had a thing for Sauron. So here, while my game will be pretty different to Dwarf Fortress in the end, it still was inspired in part by it. And I always wanted to make my version of Dungeon Keeper that was deeper, because I didn't only want to kill adventurers, I wanted to do the whole thing. I wanted to make the world my slave. So yeah. And it will have a goal. Dark Lord will have a goal, because Dwarf Fortress don't have a goal. You play until you lose, and it will have world domination. And no whips and stacking adamantine cloaks won't be OP in my game. Tip number 4: when you're coding, don't reinvent the wheel. I'm saying that because, if you're an indie game developer, you don't have unlimited time and budget. So shortcuts do help, and especially consistent and robust shortcuts like the STL and C++. So don't be afraid to use free libraries, on the internet, but remember to respect their terms of use. Use the tools that you can use. Don't waste time in Visual Studio trying to code your own version of arrays, like vectors in the STL, for example. Vectors are a kind of list that if you erase something in it, well, in short, if you erase something in it, well, it dynamically rearranges the list so that there's not a hole in your list, and you don't have to manually change every value in your list and by hand. And vectors is a very nice shortcut that in the example of arrays in arrays, basically to supposed to be quicker. Even if you make your own version of arrays and you try to dynamically change things in the array, well, you're gonna spend a lot of time doing that. And with vectors, for example, you can erase something directly and dynamically, like I said before, it dynamically rearrange your list. And some people say that it actually takes more, CPU to do that, because it's the vectors, the programming of vectors is very big and heavy. But like I said before, the programmers in the STL are wizards, and in reality, vectors are often quicker than arrays for the same thing, and we don't really know why, because they're supposed to be slower for certain operations, but testing indicates that, often they're even quicker. So tip number 5, code for the game. And this is the first abstract tip I'm saying, code for the game. What does it mean? But what do I mean by that is that you have to focus on the big picture and the end results, which in the end is your game itself. It's the gameplay. It's how it's gonna play out. You cannot be, a code hermit and stay in an engine and worry about what the game will actually be, afterwards, and simply, code your engine, and try to make the perfect engine, try to make Unreal Engine or the Valve, the Source engine, trying to be the next thing. You need to focus on the game. You need to focus on the gameplay and every aspect of your game. If you want to pick something on the ground, with a character, with your hero, and pick something on the ground, you need to think about that sort of stuff, how it's going to be in the code, and how you want it to be in your game. More importantly, you need to want to know how you want to pick up the item on the ground, the looting system. If there's a looting system, if you pick up stuff on the ground, well, how will it work? I won't say how I made that in Dark Lord, but I think it's pretty good, but you need to think about it very much well, not that much in advance, but at least before you start programming it. You cannot simply make a game engine and then think it's gonna not spout, but spit a really good game afterwards. You need to focus on game design and on gameplay and on what actually the users, the end users, the people that will play your game, how they will feel, and how difficult it will be for them to do stuff in your game, and how practical and how boring also it will be in your game, because your game needs to be fun, it needs to be deep, and well, maybe you want a short game, but I want my games to be deep, and there needs to be a lot of gameplay, and it needs to not be boring. And to do that, in conjunction with each other, you need to always think about what is it gonna be in the game, and the end results, the big picture, how will the game play out. And that's the most important thing to think about when you code. It's not about, oh well, I will use that programming language because I think it's superior, and I won't use any library because I think I can do the inner workings, better than everything else, better than everybody before me has done, and I'll do my game engine. It will be the best game engine. Okay, so I'm going off here, but yeah, basically, you need to be practical. You need to be pragmatic, and always think about the end user, the gamer. You will play your game, so you need to know what you want to do in the game, and add new features. And if you want a feature-rich game, you need to think about every single feature and how they're gonna interact with each other, and it needs to be fluid, and it needs to be good and well made and consistent and robust. So in order for all of that to happen, you need to think a lot about it before you make the game, and you cannot spend that much time on your technical stuff, how you will code, and what you want to be using, and making the most complicated code ever, or also following the best conventions of programming. I know there's a lot of people who are really interested in knowing where to put your assertions in your code, exactly where to put your exertion or your comments, what's the exact best convention to write your variables. That stuff, you don't care about it. What's important is the end result. If your game is going to be fun, if your game is going to be good and well made, and the code, in the end it's abstract, it's a black box, and even if the code is difficult to read, even if the code is ugly to I would say code purist, if the end result is a game that is fun and unique, well, you don't care about code perfection or code, as long as the code works, as long as the code is it's pragmatic, it's intelligent, as long as the code is good and it makes the good game, as long as the game is good, well, that's all that matters, really. It's not how beautiful the code is. You won't win an award because you followed the best coding conventions, to the T, and you spend half of your time making your code perfectly readable. That's not how you make a good game. So last but not least, be ambitious. So I'm saying, yeah, and that be ambitious because I read, in the top 10 beginner's guide to game developing, there were 3 or 4 of those tips in the top 10 tips that basically were the same, and basically said you need to start small and don't go in over your head. And that's good if you want to make cute games that you play yourself, but if you want to make a game that other people want to play, if you want to make a successful game, then maybe it's good for practicing and actually becoming a good game developer. And so you have to start somewhere. You have to make quick games, quick small games. Yes, that can be a good tip for that. But if you actually want to make a good game, then you have to be ambitious, and you have to either the game has to be unique, like I said before, like the graphics need to be unique, the art design need to be unique, or the gameplay needs to be unique. And one way to be unique is to have combinations of features that were never done before, and to mix them real well, and to have a very deep game. And you have to be ambitious to make that sort of deep, big game. And spoiler alert, there's a lot of features in Dark Lord, or I want to implement at least a lot of features in Dark Lord. I haven't decided to make Dark Lord for it to be a small, cute game. I want it to be deep, add a lot of features, basically everything that you want there to be in order to be Sauron and conquer the world. I want to be in my game. That's the game I want to play. So in the end, it's very simple in my mind. I'm making this game in order to make a good game, and I'm difficult in games. I have difficult taste in game, and I wouldn't be happy with myself doing a game that I don't enjoy, a silly or cute small game. Of course there are small games that are very good, like I would say Hotline Miami. It's not a very small game. I would say a very it's a medium-sized game, indie game. And what was unique about it was the sound, the music. It was awesome. You know, it was very violent, so I guess it was edgy, and but the gameplay itself, it was simply fun, and it was quite short. I went through the game in 1 hour, and not 1 hour, 1 day, and it was a medium-sized game, but the game was ambitious. The music, if you want to have good music in your game, you're gonna have to pay for it to have good music. I don't know if it was favors and every music was made for free, but the music was awesome. The music was ambitious, and the game Hotline Miami, it was ambitious. Yes, it's a medium-sized game. It's not a huge game, but what was ambitious was the art design and the music about it. And not a lot of people worked on Hotline Miami, and this was a small team. And for a small team, that kind of game was very ambitious. So look at the resources you have. So how many people is working on your game? What can you do that's ambitious with it? If you're working alone, then you really don't want to spend a lot of time on graphics, because graphics take a long time, and it can be, even with bad, not bad, but small sprite graphics, if you want to make a deep game that has sprite graphics in it, you almost already need two people to do that. You need an artist and the game developer, because you need a sprite for every single object in your game. You need maps, you need levels or maps, and to do that kind of stuff, there needs to be someone dedicated to it, and someone dedicated to the deepness of the game. So yeah, you need to focus and be ambitious. And if you're alone, if you're the only one working on your project, like I am in Dark Lord, well, you need to focus that ambition into something that will be awesome. So yeah, so in conclusion, yeah, so I have an accent, so I'm not a native English speaker, so I hope you understood everything. And yeah, I tried to be I tried to not use that many technical jargon, because I didn't want the video to be for programming experts. I wanted it rather to be for people that want to become indie game developers. And there's not only coding for that. There's art. There's design, game design. You can design a whole game on paper without knowing any programming language or what even programming is, and you can still do all the game design. So this video is also for those people. It's funny, I was watching PAX East, and that's actually what some people did. They put all their game on paper. It was a platformer, and they put all their game on paper. They drew the whole levels of their game, the whole game, on paper, because they weren't programmers. So they drew it on sheets of paper, and they were two. And to convince the programmer to make their game, they actually showed the whole game in paper form to the programmer. And it's just a funny story, but the programmer said that he was horrified. What kind of people does the whole game, all the levels on paper before actually programming anything? For a programmer, it was horrifying. But yeah, yeah. So this is my first video on YouTube. I hope you enjoyed it, and even if you don't want to make an indie game, even if you don't want an indie game developer, I hope it was entertaining, You know, I don't have the best setup to make videos. You know, I'm a very you know, I use my own tips. Like, I'm a very pragmatic kind of guy, so I'm using Windows Movie Maker and Windows Sound Recorder. And while Movie Maker, you know, it's kind of for the family, I guess. You know, uh, it's not a specialized, you know, YouTube thing. It's not expert level or anything. It's actually pretty basic, but you know, it's well made but basic. And then the sound recorder that I'm using, it's very basic. You know, if you type sound recorder and you're in Windows 7, type sound recorder, you know, in run, in your run says search box, you know, and it's gonna appear, and it's very small. It needs to and it had to be coded, you know, very simply, and I'm recording it on that, so I hope the quality of my video is good enough for you. So yeah, take care.